The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble steps of the Galactic Memorial of Fallen Heroes. Sergeant Lee Dae-ho stood perfectly still at his post beside the great tomb. His military boots were polished to a mirror shine, his uniform pressed with razor-sharp creases. On his chest, the Medal of Honor caught the early light and gleamed like a small star. 3 years. 3 years he had stood guard at this sacred place. 3 years without missing a single day. 3 years of protecting the final resting place of heroes from dozens of worlds. The memorial was built on Centauri Prime, a neutral world that belonged to no single species. Here, in this place of peace, lay the remains of the greatest warriors who had ever lived. Human soldiers rested beside Altarian knights. Vexian pilots lay next to Corvan engineers. All who had died fighting together for freedom, Dae-ho remembered. The day he first arrived at this posting, Colonel Park Ji-woo had walked him through the sacred halls. The colonel had pointed to each name carved in the black stone walls. Thousands of names, thousands of heroes. The colonel had spoken in a quiet voice about duty and honor. "This is not just a job," Colonel Park had said. "This is a sacred trust. These heroes gave everything so that others might live in peace. We guard their memory. We guard their sacrifice." Now Dae-ho understood those words completely. Every morning, when he took his position, he felt the weight of that trust. Every evening when he was relieved of duty, he felt proud to have served. The memorial was not just a tomb, it was a symbol. Beings from across the galaxy came here to remember. They came to honor the dead. They came to see what could be achieved. When different species worked together. Today felt different though. Dae-ho could sense something in the air. The usual peace of early morning was broken by the sound of vehicles approaching. Multiple vehicles moving fast across the memorial grounds. 3 black transport ships landed on the visitor platform. Their engines made a low humming sound as they powered down. Official markings covered their sides. Government vehicles. Important. Passengers. The first person to step out wore the dark robes of a galactic judge. His skin was pale blue and smooth like all Altarians. His eyes were large and dark. Behind him came 6 guards in matching uniforms. Then came people carrying recording equipment and cameras. Dae-ho recognized the judge immediately. Everyone in the galaxy knew Judge Vexthal. He appeared on news broadcasts regularly. He was known for his strong opinions about humans. He believed humans were too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous for civilized society. The judge walked slowly up the memorial steps. His robes flowed behind him like dark water. His guards stayed close. The camera operators followed at a respectful distance. They were here to record some kind of official ceremony. Other visitors were already at the memorial. A group of young Corvan students on a school trip. An elderly Vexian couple laying flowers at a grave marker. A human family reading names on the memorial wall. All of them stopped what they were doing to watch the official procession. Judge Vexthal reached the top of the steps. He stopped directly in front of Dae-ho. The 2 beings faced each other across 3 feet of space. The judge was taller. Dae-ho was broader. Neither moved. "Human soldier," the judge said in perfect standard galactic. His voice carried across the morning air. "State your name and rank." "Sergeant Lee Dae-ho, Honor Guard, Galactic Memorial Division," Dae-ho replied. His voice was steady and clear. He did not move from his position of attention. The judge circled around Dae-ho slowly. He was studying the human like a scientist might study an interesting specimen. His large eyes took in every detail of the uniform, every ribbon, every medal. 3 years you have stood at this post," the judge said. It was not a question. 3 years displaying symbols of human military aggression at a place meant for peace. Dae-ho said nothing. Military protocol was clear. He would speak only when directly questioned. He would answer only what was asked. He would remain at his post unless properly relieved. The judge stopped circling. He stood directly in front of Dae-ho again. He pointed at the Medal of Honor on the human's chest. "This decoration," the judge said loudly. His voice carried too. The gathering crowd. the symbol of violence and warfare. It has no place in a memorial dedicated to peace. Murmurs rippled through the watching crowd. Some visitors moved closer to hear better. Others backed away, sensing trouble. The camera operators adjusted their equipment to capture everything. The Medal of Honor, the judge continued, represents everything that is wrong with human military. Culture, it glorifies killing, it celebrates destruction. It encourages the very behaviors that lead to war. Deho felt heat rising in his chest. The judge was wrong. Completely wrong. The Medal of Honor was awarded for courage beyond measure, for sacrifice that saved lives, for actions that protected the innocent and defended the weak, but Deho remained silent. He was a soldier, he followed orders. He respected the chain of command. He would not argue with a galactic judge regardless of how wrong the judge might be. "I have come here today," Judge Vexthal announced, "to restore proper dignity to this sacred place, to remove symbols that contradict the peaceful purpose of this memorial." He stepped closer to Deho, close enough that the human could smell the strange metallic scent that all Altarians carried. "Remove that medal," the judge ordered. "Remove it now." The words hit Deho like a physical blow. Remove his Medal of Honor, the medal he had earned during the darkest hours of the siege of Kepler Station. The medal that represented not just his own courage, but the courage of everyone who had fought beside him. "Sir," Deho said carefully, "I cannot comply with that order." The judge's pale blue skin darkened with anger. "You refuse to obey a direct command from a galactic magistrate?" "I am bound by military protocol, sir. I can only remove my decorations on the direct order of my commanding officer. Colonel Park Ji-woo is my superior. Only he can authorize changes." "To my uniform." "Your colonel is not here," the judge snapped. "I am here. I am the legal authority in this situation." Deho remained perfectly still. "With respect, sir, military personnel follow military chain of command, even when dealing with civilian authority." The crowd around them had grown larger. Word was spreading through the memorial grounds that something important was happening. Visitors were gathering from all corners of the complex. The camera operators were recording everything. Judge Vexthal looked around at the watching faces. Some were human, some were alien. All were focused on this confrontation between the galactic judge and the human soldier. This was not going as the judge had planned. He had expected quick compliance. He had expected the human to remove the medal without argument. Instead, he faced a soldier who stood firm in his duty. The morning sun climbed higher in the sky. The shadows grew shorter. And still the two beings faced each other in the growing tension of an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. Judge Vexthal's large dark eyes narrowed as he stared at the human soldier. The morning air grew thick with tension. The crowd of visitors pressed closer but maintained a respectful distance. Everyone could feel that something important was happening. "You dare refuse a direct order from a galactic magistrate?" the judge repeated. His voice rose higher with each word. "Do you understand who I am, human?" Sergeant Lee Deho remained at perfect attention. His eyes looked straight ahead over the judge's shoulder. "Yes, sir." "You are Judge Vexthal of the Altarian High Court. I recognize your authority in civilian matters. However, I am a member of the Galactic Defense Force. Military protocol requires that I follow my chain of command." The judge's pale blue skin flushed darker. Anger radiated from his tall frame. He was not used to being told no. In his courtroom, his word was final. Here at this memorial, he expected the same absolute obedience. "Military protocol?" the judge spat. "More human excuses for violence and aggression. Your so-called chain of command is exactly the problem with your species." He turned away from Deho and addressed the growing crowd. His voice carried across the memorial steps like a speech from a podium. "Look at this human," he called out. "See how he clings to his symbols of war? See how he refuses to respect the peaceful nature of this sacred place. This is exactly why humans cannot be trusted in civilized society." Some people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded in agreement. A few looked confused about what was really happening. The camera Operators moved to get better angles as they recorded everything. Deho felt every word like a knife in his chest. The judge was painting him as a warmonger, a violent soldier who cared nothing for peace. But that was the opposite of everything Deho believed. Everything he had fought for. The Medal of Honor on his chest represented the night he had saved 10,000 civilians at Kepler Station. Men, women, and children from 6 different species. He had not fought because he loved war. He had fought because he loved peace enough to defend it, but military discipline held him in place. He would not argue. He would not defend himself. He would stand his post and follow proper protocol no matter what anyone said about him. Judge Vexthol walked in a slow circle around the memorial plaza. His dark robes flowed behind him as he spoke to the crowd like a politician giving a campaign speech. The Galactic Memorial was created to honor peace, he declared. It was built to remember those who died so that war would end forever. Yet here stands a human soldier wearing decorations that celebrate killing. An elderly Vexian woman in the crowd raised her thin voice. But Judge, are not all soldiers here to honor the dead? Are they not here to remember sacrifice? The judge spun around to face her. His expression showed irritation at being questioned. Madam, there is a difference between remembering the dead and glorifying the methods of their dying. This human wears medals that reward violence. With respect, Your Honor, came another voice from the crowd. A young Corvan student stepped forward. His teacher tried to pull him back, but he continued speaking. My grandfather died at the Battle of Zarian Heights. He died fighting beside human soldiers. The humans saved his evacuation ship. They saved 3,000 Corvan civilians. Judge Vexthol's face darkened further. He was losing control of the narrative. The crowd was not simply accepting his words. They were asking questions. They were sharing their own experiences. He strode back to where Deho stood guard. The human had not moved a single muscle during the entire exchange. His discipline was absolute. Sergeant, the judge said in a cold voice, I am ordering you one final time. Remove that medal. Place it on the ground. Show proper respect for this memorial by removing symbols of human aggression. Deho's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Sir, I cannot comply without orders from Colonel Park Ji-woo. Military regulations are clear on this matter. Then you leave me no choice, the judge declared loudly enough for everyone to hear. He gestured to his Altarian guards. Arrest this human for insubordination to galactic authority. Charge him with disturbing the peace of a sacred site. The 6 guards moved toward Deho. Their hands rested on their stun weapons. The crowd gasped and many people stepped back. This was escalating beyond a simple argument, but Deho did not move. He did not reach for any weapons. He did not even change his expression. He stood exactly as he had stood for 3 years. Perfectly still, perfectly disciplined, perfectly committed to his duty. Sir, he said in the same calm voice he had used throughout the confrontation, I am not disturbing any peace. I am standing guard as ordered. I am following proper military protocol. I am harming no one and threatening no one. One of the camera operators moved closer to capture the moment. Unknown to everyone present, his feed was being broadcast live across multiple news networks. What had started as routine coverage of a memorial ceremony was now breaking news across the galaxy. On distant worlds, beings stopped their daily activities to watch. In military bases, soldiers gathered around viewing screens in shocked silence. In government buildings, officials began making urgent communications. The judge raised his hand to signal his guards to move forward. At that moment, a new voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk. Perhaps someone should explain exactly what that medal represents before demanding its removal. Everyone turned to see a human woman walking up the memorial steps. She was middle-aged with graying hair and wore the simple robes of an academic. In her hands, she carried a thick data tablet and research materials. I am Dr. Kim So-ra, she announced as she reached the top of the steps. I am the memorial's chief historian. I have spent 5 years researching every name, every story, every sacrifice recorded in this place. Judge Vexthal looked annoyed at this new interruption. Doctor, this is official business. Please return to your duties. Dr. Kim smiled politely but did not move away. Your Honor, my duties include protecting the accuracy of information shared about this memorial. I believe there may be some misunderstanding about what that medal represents. She gestured toward Daeho's Medal of Honor. That decoration was awarded for actions during the siege of Kepler Station. Sergeant Lee saved 10,000 civilian lives during a 72-hour battle. He carried wounded soldiers to safety. He shared his rations with refugees. He held defensive positions while evacuation ships loaded with families. The crowd listened intently. This was information they had not heard before. The judge's face showed growing discomfort. Dr. Kim continued in her clear academic voice. More importantly, the Medal of Honor was not awarded by humans alone. It was presented by a joint commission that included representatives from the Altarian High Command, the Vexian Assembly, and the Corvan Elder Council. A shocked silence fell over the gathered crowd. Judge Vexthal's own people had helped award the very medal he was demanding be removed. The morning sun climbed higher in the sky. The shadows continued to shorten. And the confrontation took on an entirely new dimension as the truth began to emerge. Dr. Kim So-ra stepped closer to the center of the confrontation. Her data tablet glowed with information as she held it up for everyone to see. The crowd pressed forward to hear her words more clearly. Even Judge Vexthal seemed frozen in place by her revelation. Your Honor, Dr. Kim said in her calm academic voice, perhaps you should know more about this memorial before making decisions about what belongs here. She touched her tablet and a holographic display appeared in the air above it. Names began scrolling past in glowing letters. Thousands of names in dozens of different languages and scripts. These are the heroes who rest in this tomb, she continued. Every single being whose remains lie beneath our feet. Every warrior who died fighting for freedom and peace. And the names continued to scroll. Human names mixed with Altarian names. Vexian symbols appeared next to Corvin's script. The list seemed endless. Would you like to know what percentage of these heroes are human? Dr. Kim asked, looking directly at Judge Vexthal. The judge said nothing. His pale blue face had grown darker with embarrassment and anger. He clearly had not expected this level of challenge to his authority. 40%, Dr. Kim announced. Less than half of the beings buried here are human. The majority are from other species. Altarians, Vexians, Corvans, and dozens of other worlds. She gestured toward the great doors of the memorial building behind them. Inside those walls lie the remains of 237 Altarian knights who died fighting alongside human soldiers. They volunteered to serve with human units. They requested to be buried with their human brothers and sisters in arms, the crowd murmured in surprise. Many had never known the true composition of the memorial. They had assumed it was primarily a human monument. Judge Vexthal found his voice again. That changes nothing. The human still wears symbols of aggression in a place of peace. Dr. Kim smiled and touched her tablet again. The holographic display changed to show an image of a large stone tablet covered in writing. This is the memorial's founding charter, she said, written jointly by the leaders of 17 different species after the Zarian War ended. Perhaps you would like me to read the relevant section? Without waiting for permission, she began to read in a clear voice that carried across the entire plaza. Let this place stand as eternal proof that courage knows no species. Let it honor those who died not for conquest but for protection. Let it remember those who gave their lives so that others might live in freedom. Let the decorations and honors of all species be displayed here proudly, for they represent not the love of war, but the love of peace strong enough to fight for it. The words hung in the morning air like a judgment. Several people in the crowd began to nod. Others whispered to their companions in recognition and understanding. Dr. Kim was not finished. She touched her tablet once more and the display showed official documents with multiple seals and signatures. The memorial's charter specifically states that military honors earned in defense of peace may be worn by all guards and visitors. This was signed by representatives of every member species of the Galactic Alliance, including 3 members of the Altarian High Command. Judge Vexthal's expression grew more uncomfortable with each revelation. The camera operators continued recording everything. The live broadcast was reaching more worlds every minute. Furthermore, Dr. Kim continued, Sergeant Lee's Medal of Honor was recommended for approval by Captain Raykor of the Altarian Defense Force. Captain Raykor personally witnessed the actions at Kepler Station. He submitted a detailed report, praising the humans' courage and sacrifice. A new voice suddenly called out from the back of the crowd. That is correct. Everyone turned to see someone pushing through the gathered visitors. The crowd parted to reveal an Altarian in a military hoverchair. His left arm was missing and his face bore the scars of old battles. I am Captain Raykor, the newcomer announced as he guided his chair toward the front of the group. I was there at Kepler Station. I saw everything Sergeant Lee did during those 3 days. Judge Vexthal stared at the war veteran in shock. Captain Raykor was a decorated hero of the Altarian Defense Force. His testimony would carry enormous weight with any crowd. Captain Raykor positioned his hoverchair directly between the judge and Sergeant Deho. He looked up at his fellow Altarian with disappointment clear in his large dark eyes. Your Honor, the captain said, you are making a serious mistake. This human saved my life and the lives of hundreds of Altarian civilians at Kepler Station. The judge tried to regain control of the situation. Captain, your personal feelings do not change the legal requirements of this memorial. Legal requirements? Captain Raykor's voice rose with indignation. I helped write those requirements. I was part of the commission that designed this memorial, and I personally recommended Sergeant Lee for his Medal of Honor. He gestured toward Deho, who still stood at perfect attention throughout the entire confrontation. This human carried wounded Altarian soldiers to safety while under enemy fire. He gave his own medical supplies to injured civilians. He shared his food rations with refugee families who had nothing. The crowd listened in complete silence. Even the judge seemed unable to speak. Captain Raykor continued his testimony. When the evacuation ships arrived, Sergeant Lee refused to board until every civilian was safely loaded. He stayed behind to hold the defensive positions. He fought for 72 hours straight to protect beings who were not even his own species. Dr. Kim stepped forward with her tablet again. Captain, would you like to see the official casualty reports from Kepler Station? I know those numbers by heart, the captain replied. 10,000 civilians evacuated safely. 1,500 of them were Altarian, 300 were Thexian, 800 were Corvan, the rest were from various other species. He looked directly at Judge Vexthal. Your Honor, this human risked his life to save members of your own people. The medal he wears represents not aggression but the highest form of sacrifice, the willingness to die for strangers. More voices began to speak up from the crowd. A Thexian elder stepped forward. My granddaughter was at Kepler Station. She was only 6 years old. This human soldier carried her to the evacuation ship when she was too frightened to walk. A young Corvan woman raised her hand. My father served with human units during the war. He always spoke of their courage and honor. He said they treated alien soldiers as true brothers. One by one, more beings began to share their stories. Stories of human sacrifice. Stories of courage that crossed species lines. Stories of soldiers who fought not for conquest but for protection. Judge Vexthal found himself surrounded by testimony that contradicted everything he had believed about humans. The crowd was no longer neutral observers. They were witnesses to the truth. The morning sun continued its climb across the sky. The memorial plaza filled with more visitors drawn by the commotion, and the confrontation between the judge and the human soldier transformed into something much larger and more significant. The truth was emerging from the shadows of prejudice and ignorance, and Judge Vexthal was beginning to realize that he had made a terrible mistake. Captain Raykor guided his hoverchair closer to Sergeant Deho. The Altarian war veteran looked up at the human soldier with obvious respect and admiration. The crowd watched in complete silence as the two warriors faced each other. "Sergeant Lee," Captain Raycor said softly, "do you remember the night of the third day at Kepler Station?" For the first time since the confrontation began, Deho broke his rigid attention stance. He looked down at the captain and his expression softened. Slightly. "Yes, sir, I remember," Deho replied quietly. "Tell them what happened," the captain urged. "Tell them about the children." Deho hesitated. Military training taught him to be modest about his actions. Heroes did not boast about their deeds. But Captain Raycor was a superior officer giving him a direct order. "Sir, there were 43 children trapped in the basement of the civilian shelter. The building was on fire from enemy bombardment. The exits were blocked. Captain Raycor had been wounded trying to reach them." The captain nodded encouragingly. "Continue, Sergeant." "I went through the rubble tunnel that Captain Raycor had started. The structure was unstable. Every few minutes more debris would fall. I could only carry one child at a time." Dr. Kim Sora stepped forward with her tablet. "Sergeant, how long did this rescue operation take?" 14 hours, ma'am, from sunset to sunrise." A gasp went through the crowd. 14 hours of crawling through unstable rubble to save children. 14 hours of risking death with every trip. What species were the children? Dr. Kim asked. 26 were Altarian. 12 were Thexian, 5 were Corvan, none were human. Judge Vexthal had been listening with growing discomfort. The story painted a picture completely different from his beliefs about human nature. He tried to interrupt. "This is all very touching, but it does not change the legal issues regarding military decorations in a neutral memorial." Captain Raycor spun his hoverchair to face the judge. His scarred face showed anger at the interruption. "Your Honor, this human lost 3 fingers to falling debris while saving those children. He suffered burns over 30% of his body. He was hospitalized for 2 months. And when he recovered, the first thing he asked was whether all the children were safe." More people began pushing through the crowd. Word had spread across the memorial complex about the confrontation. Visitors were arriving from all corners of the facility. An elderly human woman emerged from the group. She walked with a cane but moved with determination. Behind her came a young Altarian female who helped support her steps. "Excuse me," the elderly woman called out. "I am Helen Park. This is my granddaughter Zara. She was one of the children rescued from that basement." The young Altarian woman stepped forward. Despite her alien features, her expression showed deep emotion as she looked at Sergeant Deho. "I was 8 years old," Zara said in accented Standard Galactic. "I was trapped under a fallen beam. I could not move. I was so scared. This human soldier crawled through the fire to reach me. He lifted the beam with his bare hands even though it burned him. He carried me to safety." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small medal on a ribbon. It was clearly of Altarian design. "My family gave me this when I turned 18. It is the Altarian Medal of Life Debt. It means someone saved my life at great risk to their own. I have carried it for 12 years, waiting for the chance to return it to the person who earned it." She walked up to Sergeant Deho and held out the medal. "This belongs to you, Sergeant. You saved not just my life, but my future. My children will exist because you were brave enough to risk everything for a stranger." Deho looked uncertain. He was still on duty and maintaining his post. But Captain Raycor nodded permission. "Accept it, Sergeant. It is an honor earned in blood." More people began stepping forward from the crowd. A middle-aged Thexian man approached with tears in his large eyes. "My brother was a pilot at Kepler Station. He died in the battle. But before he died, he sent a message to our family. He said the human soldiers were the bravest beings he had ever known. He said they treated every alien life as precious as their own." A young Corvan couple moved to the front of the group. The female carried a small child in her arms. "Our son was born at Kepler Station during the evacuation. Human medics delivered him while explosions shook the medical shelter. They used their own supplies to save him when Corvin medicine was not available. Story after story emerged from the crowd. Each testimony added to the growing picture of human sacrifice and courage. Judge Vexthal found himself listening to account after account that contradicted his beliefs. Dr. Kim, Sora had been taking notes on her tablet throughout all the testimonies. She looked up with a serious expression. Your Honor, I have recorded 23 separate accounts of human sacrifice at Kepler Station alone, but that is only one battle. The memorial records contain thousands of similar stories from hundreds of different conflicts. She touched her tablet and the holographic display showed battle reports, medical records, and official citations. The siege of Proxima 7, human engineers worked for 6 days, without sleep to repair the life support systems that kept 12,000 Altarian colonists alive. The defense of Titan Base, human pilots flew suicide missions to protect evacuation. Ships carrying mixed-species refugees. The rescue at Vega Station? Human Marines died holding the line while alien civilians escaped to safety. The list continued. Battle after battle where humans had sacrificed for others. Conflict after conflict where human courage had saved alien lives. Captain Raycor spoke again. Your Honor, the humans have a saying. They say that courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what is right despite being afraid. Every human soldier I have known has embodied that principle. Judge Vexthal looked around at the crowd. Dozens of beings from multiple species all nodding in agreement. All sharing similar stories. All contradicting the beliefs he had held for years. I served with humans for 10 years, Captain Raycor continued. I have seen them share their last meal with hungry alien children. I have seen them give up their own medical supplies to treat wounded enemies. I have seen them die protecting beings they had never met before. The captain gestured toward Sergeant Deho. This soldier represents the best of his species. The medal he wears was earned through sacrifice, not aggression. It represents love of peace strong enough to fight for it. The morning sun was now high overhead. The memorial plaza was packed with visitors drawn by the unfolding drama. And Judge Vexthal was beginning to realize that everything he thought he knew about humans might be wrong. Across the galaxy, beings stopped their daily activities to watch the live broadcast from the memorial. In homes, offices, schools, and military bases, screens showed the confrontation between Judge Vexthal and Sergeant Deho, what had started. As routine news coverage was now the most watched event in galactic history on Earth. President Yoon Mi-jin was in her office reviewing trade agreements when her aide rushed in with urgent news. Madam President, you need to see this immediately. The aide activated the wall screen and the memorial plaza appeared. President Yoon watched in shocked silence as Judge Vexthal demanded that Sergeant Deho remove his Medal of Honor. Her expression grew darker with each passing minute. Get me a direct line to the Galactic Council, she ordered, and call an emergency session of the Defense Cabinet. This ends now. Similar scenes played out on worlds throughout the galaxy. On the Altarian homeworld, citizens gathered in public squares to watch the broadcast on large community screens. Many were horrified to see their own judge attacking a decorated war hero. Protests began forming in the capital, city of New Altara. Veterans from the Zarian War marched toward the government buildings, carrying signs demanding Judge Vexthal's removal from office. The crowd grew larger every hour as more people learned about the confrontation. Elder Velion, the senior member of the Altarian High Command, watched the broadcast from his private chambers. He had served with human forces during 3 separate conflicts. He knew the truth about human courage and sacrifice. This is a disgrace, he said to his aide. Judge Vexthal brings shame to our entire species. Send word to the memorial immediately. Tell them that the Altarian government does not support his actions. On Nexia Prime, the situation was even more dramatic. The Planetary Assembly interrupted their session to watch the broadcast together. When they heard the testimonies about human sacrifice at Kepler Station, several Assembly members began to weep openly. The humans saved 60,000 Nexion. Civilians during the war, announced Prime Minister Texera. They asked for nothing in return. They expected no gratitude. They simply did what they believed was right. She stood before the assembled representatives with tears streaming down her face. Judge Vexthol dishonors not just humans, but everyone who has ever been saved by human courage. We must make our position clear. The Dexian Assembly voted unanimously to condemn the judge's actions and to formally thank Sergeant Deho for his service to galactic peace on Korva Station. The response was swift and decisive. The Korvan Elder Council had been meeting when news of the confrontation reached them. Elder Morven, whose own grandson had been saved by human soldiers, called for immediate action. "Send a message to the memorial," he ordered. "Tell them that the Korvan people stand with Sergeant Lee. Tell them that his Medal of Honor is welcome in any Korvan facility for as long as he lives." But the most significant response came from an unexpected source. Deep in the neutral zone, aboard the flagship of the Galactic Council, Council Leader Mortith was watching the broadcast with growing alarm. Council Leader Mortith was ancient even by galactic standards. He had lived through the formation of the Galactic Alliance. He had witnessed the wars that nearly destroyed civilization. He had seen species learn to work together for the first time in history. "This cannot be allowed to continue," he said to his staff. "Judge Vexthol is destroying everything we have built. He is turning species against each other based on ignorance and prejudice." The council leader activated his emergency powers and called for an immediate session of the full Galactic Council. Representatives from every member world received urgent summons to attend a special hearing. Meanwhile, at the memorial, the confrontation continued. Judge Vexthol was becoming increasingly isolated as more testimonies contradicted his position. But he was too proud to admit his mistake. Dr. Kim So-ra received a priority message on her tablet. She read it quickly and then looked up with surprise. "Your Honor," she announced, "I am receiving communications from governments across the galaxy. They are all expressing support for Sergeant Deho and concern about your actions here today." Judge Vexthol's expression grew even darker. "I do not care about political pressure. I am enforcing galactic law." "Actually, Your Honor," Dr. Kim replied, "I have been researching galactic law while we have been talking." "There is no legal basis for your demand. The Memorial's charter specifically protects the right of military personnel to wear earned decorations." She held up her tablet to show official legal documents. "Furthermore, military personnel on duty are governed by military law, not civilian authority. You have no legal right to order Sergeant Deho to remove his uniform decorations," the crowd murmured as this information spread. Judge Vexthol had been operating outside his authority from the beginning. Captain Raycor spoke up from his hover chair. "Your Honor, as a legal expert, surely you understand the concept of jurisdiction. Military personnel follow military law. Even judges must respect that principle." More urgent messages were arriving on Dr. Kim's tablet. She read them with growing amazement. "Your Honor, I am now receiving formal protests from the governments of Earth, Altara, Lexia, Prime, Korva Station, and 17 other worlds. They are all demanding that you cease your interference with memorial operations." Judge Vexthol looked around at the crowd. Every face showed disapproval of his actions. The camera operators continued broadcasting everything across the galaxy. His reputation was being destroyed in real time. "This is a conspiracy," he declared desperately. "A coordinated effort to undermine galactic authority and promote human militarism." Dr. Kim received another message and her expression became very serious. "Your Honor, I have just received a direct communication from Council Leader Mortith. The Galactic Council is convening an emergency session to review your fitness for office. You are ordered to return to council chambers immediately for disciplinary hearings." The words hit Judge Vexthol like a physical blow. An emergency review of his fitness for office could end his career. The most powerful beings in the galaxy were questioning his judgment and competence, but still he refused to back down. Pride and stubbornness held him in place even as his world crumbled around him. He had gone too far to retreat now. The confrontation was approaching its climax. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched and waited to see how it would end. And Sergeant Deho continued to stand at perfect attention, unmoved by the chaos swirling around him. The sound of approaching aircraft broke through the tense atmosphere at the memorial. Everyone looked up to see 3 official Galactic Council vessels descending toward the landing platform. Their sleek silver hulls gleamed in the afternoon sun as they touched down with barely a whisper. The first being to emerge was Admiral Wan Tae-min, the highest-ranking human officer in the Galactic Defense Force. His uniform was covered with decorations from dozens of campaigns. Behind him came Council Leader Mort Ith himself, ancient and dignified in his ceremonial robes, but it was the third figure that caused the biggest stir. Colonel Park Ji-woo, Sergeant Deho's commanding officer, strode across the plaza with purpose. In every step. His face showed controlled anger as he surveyed the scene. Judge Vexthal watched the approaching officials with growing dread. The presence of Council Leader Mortith meant this situation had reached the highest levels of galactic government. His career was in serious jeopardy. Colonel Park walked directly to where Sergeant Deho still stood at attention. The human soldier had not moved from his post despite hours of confrontation and chaos around him. "Sergeant Lee," the colonel said in a firm voice. "Report." "Sir?" Deho replied crisply. "Judge Vexthal ordered me to remove my Medal of Honor. I refused based on military protocol requiring authorization from my commanding officer. The judge then threatened to have me arrested for insubordination." Colonel Park nodded grimly. "You followed proper procedure, Sergeant. Well done." He turned to face Judge Vexthal with cold fury in his eyes. "Your Honor, you have interfered with a soldier performing his assigned duties. You have attempted to override military authority without proper jurisdiction. You have created a diplomatic incident that has embarrassed multiple governments." Council Leader Mortith stepped forward. Before the judge could respond, his ancient voice carried the weight of centuries of wisdom and authority. "Judge Vexthal," the council leader said, "I have reviewed the legal basis for your actions here today. I find no justification under galactic law for your demands. You have exceeded your authority and brought shame to the office of Galactic Magistrate." The judge tried one last desperate defense. "Council Leader, I was protecting the peaceful nature of this memorial from symbols of human militarism." Admiral Wan Tae-min spoke for the first time since arriving. His voice was calm but filled with steel. "Your Honor, I have brought with me the complete records of every being buried in this memorial. Would you like to know how many were killed by humans?" Judge Vexthal said nothing. He sensed a trap but could not avoid it. "0, the Admiral continued. "Not a single being in this tomb was killed by human forces. Every death was caused by the enemies we fought together. Every sacrifice was made in defense of peace and freedom." Dr. Kim Sora stepped forward with her tablet. "Admiral, I have been compiling testimonies all day about human actions during the wars. Shall I share the summary?" The Admiral nodded permission. 23. Separate accounts of humans risking their lives to save alien civilians. 15 reports of humans sharing critical supplies with non-human allies. 37 citations for humans who died protecting alien evacuation ships. And over 200 documented cases of humans providing medical care to wounded enemies. The crowd listened in amazement. The scope of human sacrifice was even greater than they had realized. Council Leader Mordith spoke again. "Judge Vexthal, your actions today have revealed a dangerous bias against humans based on ignorance rather than facts. This prejudice makes you unfit to serve as a galactic magistrate." He activated a holographic communicator and the image of the full Galactic Council appeared above the device. Hundreds of representatives from dozens of worlds looked down at the memorial plaza. "The Council has voted," Mortith announced. "Judge Vexthal is hereby stripped of his judicial authority pending a full investigation into his past rulings for evidence of species bias. He is ordered to report to council chambers immediately for disciplinary proceedings." Judge Vexthal's career was over. Years of work and advancement destroyed by a single act of prejudice and pride. He looked around at the crowd of beings who had witnessed his downfall. But then something unexpected happened. The judge's shoulders sagged as the weight of his mistakes finally hit him. He had been wrong. Completely and utterly wrong about humans and their place in galactic society. He began, then stopped. The words were difficult to say. I have made a terrible error in judgment. He walked slowly toward Sergeant Deho, who still stood at perfect attention despite everything that had happened. The human soldier's discipline and dignity throughout the entire confrontation had been flawless. Sergeant Lee, the judge said quietly, I owe you an apology. I spoke from ignorance and prejudice rather than knowledge and wisdom. Your Medal of Honor represents the highest ideals of service and sacrifice. I was wrong to demand its removal. Judge. Vexthal reached up and removed his own judicial insignia from his robes. The golden symbol of his office caught the light as he held it in his hands. I no longer deserve to wear this, he said. He walked to the base of the memorial and placed the insignia among the flowers left by visitors. Perhaps one day I can learn to understand what true honor means. Council leader Mortith watched this display with ancient eyes that had seen many falls from grace. Judge Vexthal, you have shown wisdom in acknowledging your mistakes. That is the first step toward redemption. The crowd began to disperse as the official proceedings concluded. The crisis was over, but the impact would last much longer. Colonel Park approached his sergeant. Deho, you may resume normal duties. For the first time in hours, Sergeant Deho relaxed from his rigid attention stance. He looked around at the memorial plaza where so much had transpired. Sir, he said to his colonel, request permission to remain at post. This is where I belong. Colonel Park smiled. Permission granted, Sergeant. Carry on. As the sun began to set over the memorial, Sergeant Deho returned to his position as honor guard. His Medal of Honor gleamed in the fading light. No longer a symbol of controversy, but a reminder of what could be achieved when different species work together. Visitors continued to arrive throughout the evening. They came not just to see the memorial, but to witness the place where prejudice had been defeated by truth, where courage had triumphed over ignorance, where the bonds between species had been proven stronger than the forces that sought to divide them. The story would be told for generations across the galaxy. The day when a human soldier's quiet dignity had changed the course of interspecies relations. The day when Judge Alien ordered the tomb guard to remove his Medal of Honor and learned that some things are worth more than pride. And in years that followed, the memorial would establish the Deho Protocol, ensuring that no guard's honors could ever again be challenged without proper cause. The quiet human sergeant had become a symbol of everything the Galactic Alliance stood for: justice, honor, unity, and the courage to stand for what is right, no matter the cost.